go and have a look at eyes on the solar system. As you can see right here, what we have is essentially a live view of where QE2 is right now, using the very same trajectory data that Steve was just talking about. And you can see that it's about 3.6 million miles from the Earth, and we can take a look at the asteroid. Of course, the news that QE2 has a small moon was a surprise to all of us, and so we'll be adding that in the next few weeks to give QE2 the most accurate representation we can. But let's leave this little module for now. I'm going to look at some other things in and around our solar system that might be interesting. Things that people may not have figured out for themselves in Eyes on the Solar System before. I'm going to go and click on the Visual Controls tab in the bottom right-hand corner here. And way up at the top, under the different sections, the layers of objects we have in Eyes on the Solar System, there's a section called Small Bodies. That's where we keep things like asteroids and comets. Now I'm going to turn on the comets layer, and you can see Eyes on the Solar System gets actually quite busy. You can see our old friend Hartley 2 that we explored with the Epoxy spacecraft, Comet Ellen over here, Halley's Comet, of course. But two comets in particular are going to be very, very exciting over the next year or so. I'm going to go and look at Comet Ison. You can see its orbit here. If we start fast-forwarding through time, we're looking at May. This control down here, we can actually skip forwards. And now we're seeing Comet Ison screen towards the inner solar system. You can see right there, in October of this year, it actually gets pretty close to the planet Mars. Let's go and see just how close that is. We can double-click on an object and ride on board with it. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we can have a look at the coma around the comet. And I can right-click on any object in Eyes on the Solar System, measure the distance from something, click on something else, and now I've got a virtual tape measure through space that tells me how far apart these two objects are. At this point, you can see that Mars and Comet Ison in October of 2013 are about 10 million miles apart, and they get within about 8 million miles. I'm going to back out to the whole of the solar system again with the Home button, and I'm going to keep fast-forwarding, and eventually you'll see Comet Ison get incredibly close to the Sun. It's an incredibly close flyby, something known as a sun-grazing comet. It gets so close. Now, if it survives that incredibly close approach to the Sun, it's going to be a spectacular comet for people to see from the Earth at the end of this year and the beginning of next year. Now, let's go look at a different asteroid, a different comet. What I'm going to look at now is the one discovered by the Siding Springs Observatory. It's right down here, called 2013 A1. Here it is. I'm going to go right on board the comet. And you can see right now it's way, way out below the solar system. And I'm going to actually lock the camera from the shoulder of this comet onto the planet Mars. Let's lock the camera by right-clicking the mouse and hitting lock on. And I'm going to fast forward. And you can see we're now getting through November, December, and I'm going to keep going. You can see the Maven spacecraft gets to Mars not long before this comet flies past. And towards the end of next year, there you saw it, very, very quick flyby. I was fast-forwarding a little bit too quick. Let's rewind time and look at that flyby in a little bit more detail. As we get closer, you can see Mars's moons, Phobos and Deimos. There they are. And from this comet, it gets incredibly close to the planet Mars. Let's just see how close that is. Let's go and look at Mars. Let's go and zoom well out of the planet. And we can measure that distance as well. We can right-click on Mars, measure the distance from, and left-click on the comet. And you can see at this point, it's only 72,000 miles. An incredibly close flyby. It's going to be a spectacular thing to see from the surface of Mars, hopefully with our spacecraft in orbit around Mars and from the surface. And of course, comets aren't just something we look at from a long, long way away. Occasionally, we send spacecraft to go and take a slightly closer look at them. And if we go back to the present day, you'll see that this comet here, Churyumov-Gerasimenko, has a spacecraft very close to it, Rosetta. And right now, they're only a few million miles apart, in fact. You can see that distance, 16.6 million miles. If I start fast-forwarding time to about 12 months from now, the Rosetta mission, which is a collaboration between the European Space Agency and NASA as well, if we go all the way through the beginning of next year, you're going to see that the Rosetta spacecraft gets incredibly close to this comet as well. And in fact, it's going to go into orbit around the comet and eventually put a lander onto the surface of that comet as well. And so now what we're going to do is just go back to our little QE2 module, so you can all at home, right on board the asteroid, see exactly where it is. Up in the top corner is the Tours and Features module. I'm going to hit 1998 QE2, and we take you to this little mini module just about QE2. And by hitting the ride along button, there I am on board the asteroid. You can see the Earth and the Moon right behind it. For the kind of Bruce Willis view, bring up the controls and hit this kind of ride along button here, and suddenly you're riding on board the asteroid as it does its flyby of the Earth over the next few days. So that's Eyes on the Solar System. Once again, you can go to it by going to eyes.nasa.gov. And with that, I'm going to throw it back to Gay.